Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the elephant in the room today, the biggest Battlefield 2042 update that I can remember in recent memory, and in my opinion, probably bare minimum a top 3 update, if not the best update the game has ever received since Battlefield 2042's release. And some of you guys are listening to this going, wow, Enders, how much money did EA pay you to say this? And the answer is $0. And I just want to address something that happened in my last video that was also pretty positive about Season 6. I conduct myself in a very authentic manner. For 5 years, I've made content. I've never changed anything about how I act. I'm always going to give you guys my authentic, real opinion about it. And this calls for positivity. If something calls for negativity, then I'm going to be negative about it. So that is how things are conducted on this channel. If you enjoy that, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This video is going to be quite long, so I don't want to be too long-winded. For those of you that were unaware, this update is not out yet as of this video. It is coming out on October 10th. And one thing that isn't mentioned in this patch, but is still very relevant to Season 6 coming out, is when Season 6 releases on October 10th, they are actually putting a new anti-cheat to Battlefield 2042 in the form of EA anti-cheat. It is a new kernel mode anti-cheat, and we will have to see how that actually performs. Moving on to a very brief recap of what is coming in Season 6 content-wise before we get into the patch notes. Obviously, we're getting one new map. It's called Redacted. It's inspired off of Operation Lockers and Operation Metro. It's going to be close quarters. This is actually the only map in Battlefield 2042 that does not have an outside portion. We are getting 3 new weapons. No vault weapons have been mentioned. The new weapons we are getting is 1 AR, 1 sidearm, and 1 marksman rifle. They are called the G.428, L9CZ, and VHX-D3. We're getting 1 new gadget in the ammo and medical pouches, 1 new vehicle in the Pond Hawk hover bike, new battle pass, and of course, a bunch of quality of life improvements, which I will now go over in detail. The first thing I will go over is the fact that aim assist is getting another passover once again. This is probably the 4th or maybe even 5th time they've updated aim assist. This time, you're getting new ways to customize your aim assist settings with soldier aim input curves for both the aim assist itself and then individual input curves for slowdown and snap aim. Jumping from aim assist to one of the weakest points in this update, in my opinion, unfortunately, suppressors are receiving heavy nerfs. And the nerfs are heavy enough, in my opinion, to where I don't think suppressors are going to be worth using anymore in Season 6. DICE are trying to make it so you have to use subsonic ammunition in order to get most of the benefit from using a suppressor, and this includes all suppressor categories. For instance, if you're using the wrapped suppressor, which is by far the most popular suppressor in the entire game, and classified as a light suppressor, when you shoot with that suppressor, people can still see your red dot appear on the minimap from up to 20 meters away. In Update 6.0, they are doubling that distance people can see you on the minimap from when you shoot when you have a suppressor to 40 meters, which is crazy, and it basically means suppressors don't work until people are 40 meters away from you, which is just stupid. It defeats the purpose of using the suppressor in the first place. But if you equip subsonic ammunition, it brings that distance down back to 20 meters, but of course you have to take the bullet velocity penalty from using subsonic ammunition on top of the bullet velocity penalty of using a suppressor already. So I disagree with these changes. I honestly hope they revert them. Luckily, the suppressor changes are, in my opinion, some of the worst changes in this patch, and most of the rest of the patch is definitely great, including this next change, which is one of the biggest changes coming to Battlefield 2042 since release. They are finally fixing the camera recoil/recoil bug. The game has been plagued by this bug since release, and I tried to inform developers of this over a year ago, and it is finally getting fixed in Battlefield 2042 Season 6. This fix essentially makes it so recoil feels much smoother, much more natural. It keeps the center of your screen in place with your red dot sight where it should always be at all times anyway. And this is a fundamental change to the entire game. Every single weapon is affected by this. Every single player is affected by this. And I honestly am excited to feel how the game feels once Season 6 drops. Moving on to the gargantuan patch notes, just a reminder, if you are enjoying the content, if you find it informative, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton. This is my full-time job, and I try to put as much passion and energy into it as I possibly can. So thank you to everyone that does hit the like button. You are definitely appreciated. In the AI Soldier and General Improvement section, these are the highlights. They have added a new option that allows players to automatically throw ammo and medical crates upon a single button press. This is similar to how they have auto-throw grenades in the options menu. This option can be found under mouse and keyboard or controller, and then you look under the on foot section. On top of that, they have added a notification that is both a visual and audible notification for when a squad mate is trying to spawn on you, but you are in combat. I'm personally kind of worried for how loud this audio notification is because I personally try to spam when I'm trying to spawn on my teammate. I don't want it to be too annoying, but that is being added in Season 6. Another thing they're doing is a bunch of health bar changes. They're making it easier to see. They're changing how the health bar looks. They're making it so you can tell how much damage you did to someone. And generally, I think these are awesome changes. Another awesome change, specifically for you revive fanatics out there, is they have added revive canceling to the game. So, say you're trying to revive someone, but you want to cancel that revive to kill someone first, you can do that by shooting your gun or hitting ADS, and that will now cancel the revive action. On top of that, medics that are inside of vehicles will be taken off that list that shows you how many medics are nearby in order to avoid confusion. Because sometimes, I know this happens to me personally, I'm laying down on the floor and there's a medic 2 meters from me, and I'm like, okay, why is he not reviving me? But he's actually in a tank and he's actively shooting people because he's either the driver or the gunner. Moving on to the audio section, they have polished a bunch of different aspects of interior and exterior audio. Say you're in an interior environment and there are just super loud sounds outside. Some of them should be more muffled now, while the interior sounds are being focused on. So footsteps, grenades clanging off of walls, someone placing a spawn beacon should be easier to hear in interior areas, and the exterior sounds of the battlefield should be a little bit more muffled. And one last thing I will mention in the audio section, they have removed the tinnitus sound effect from low damage dealing explosives, which some players were complaining about. It was too loud or just too irritating, and I think that's generally a very good change. Moving on to the Battlefield Portal section, a bunch of miscellaneous changes here, nothing really of note. The biggest thing is probably DICE fixing an issue that caused XP restrictions to not correctly update, which would of course prevent people from earning XP on Portal servers. Moving on to the class changes section, the Recon class is having pretty significant changes that actually improve the class quite a bit. The Recon class is seeing its weapon proficiencies changed a bit, and they will now have a weapon proficiency for their secondary weapons that makes the draw time significantly faster. This sort of encourages that, use a bolt action, body shot someone, switch to your sidearm real fast and finish them off style of gameplay that we saw a lot in Battlefield 1, but it doesn't just apply to bolt actions and secondary weapons, it applies to using any weapon on the Recon class at all. So say if you're using an SMG with Casper, you will now basically switch weapons faster all the time. Moving on to the Gadget and Specialist section, they fixed an issue that caused the smoke grenade to allow explosive damage to bleed through walls. This is DICE's second attempt at fixing this problem, so let's hope the second time is the charm. The next change is probably the most important change in the entire patch notes. EOD bots can now kill you if they fall on your head. That certainly sounds like a video idea to me, ladies and gentlemen. Comment down below if you want to see me try to kill people with falling EOD bots. But continuing with the patch notes, they fixed an issue that caused passengers shooting rockets to actually move the vehicle itself. You might have felt this while flying an aerial vehicle in particular, such as the Superhind or the Nightbird. They have also improved the scaling and readability of lock-on states. For instance, if you're getting SOFLAMmed, it will tell you that you're getting SOFLAMmed. If you're getting tracer darted, it will now tell you that. A great change for you engineer players, grenades and RPGs will now have their minimum damage capped at 10 to essentially ensure some sort of damage readability and consistency. This means the minimum damage you can do hitting any vehicle from any distance is 10 damage with an RPG or any sort of dumbfire rocket. And the last change I will mention in the gadget section is spawn beacons are now requiring slightly more room in order to be deployed to more accurately represent the object's boundaries. A developer comment on this said, "This should help alleviate situations where spawn beacons can be wedged into incredibly narrow spaces." Moving on to the specialist section, Blasco is seeing a buff, actually. They are increasing the spotting radius of Blasco's X6 infiltration device by 10%, and Boris is seeing improvements as well. They have increased the range at which Boris's technician trait activates by actually double from 1.6 meters to 3.2, and Boris's technician trait will now cause the sentry turret to have an increased rate of fire by 25%, which is actually an insane buff in my opinion, and not needed. People like to say that Boris was underpowered, but I actually think that he commands respect, and I think that is one thing that people don't really acknowledge when you talk about Boris. They sort of say, oh, you know, my turret isn't killing anybody, but it's making me respect it. I have to kill the turret in order to even get to you sometimes, and that wastes time, that exposes me to threats, and I think Boris was strong enough. But I digress, and we move on with the changes. Casper, they fixed an issue that allowed his recon drone thermal sight to see enemies through smoke, and they've increased the cooldown for the recon drone by 5 seconds. Crawford has seen a small change. His trait has been changed to provide him with 1 extra rocket to all shoulder-fired launchers. So, to you anti-vehicle people out there, maybe take Crawford more seriously. Moving on to Dozer, which has fortunately seen some significant nerfs. Dozer will now take damage and flinch when his shield is getting shot, and he has also received multiple different movement nerfs. They've reduced his rotation speed, they've reduced his pitch speed, they've reduced his strafing movement, they've reduced his movement speed while backwards with his shield up, they've reduced his sprint velocity with his shield up. So essentially, everything about Dozer has been nerfed. Basically just make him less annoying. Some of those changes might be seen as controversial, but I personally think that Dozer was a little annoying, and they aren't significant nerfs. They're very slight changes to his movement. You probably won't be able to feel it that much. Moving on to Falk. Falk has actually seen a nerf. They have removed Falk's ability to resupply her Sabrent pistol from medical crates. Moving on to one of the most hated specialists in the entire game, McKay. McKay has actually been nerfed very significantly. They have reduced maximum range of McKay's grappling hook by 17%, and this is after they already reduced the range of it in a previous update. So they've actually reduced the range of the grapple hook twice now, and I think it's going to be too short now, but I don't know. Maybe I'll play the game and I'll think it's fine. But that isn't the nerf that is really hard hitting. The bad nerf, in my opinion, that is actually unneeded, and I'll go into detail why, is the fact that they reduced the speed at which the grapple hook reaches maximum length after being fired by a staggering 25%. The developers had this to say regarding the nerfs, quote, "We've made these changes to reduce the number of scenarios McKay could use his grapple hook to get to unintended locations, as well as to reduce what we call the 360 problem, which means you can die from 360 degrees of the level around you," end quote. And this is where I come in. Many of you guys know that I play McKay as my main specialist. I'm not delusional. I play McKay because he's incredibly strong, and he allows you to essentially ignore the rules of the game. That is fundamentally overpowered. The real problem is McKay is in the game to begin with. If you want to reduce people dying from 360 degrees around them, you shouldn't have put McKay in the game in the first place, or you should have designed better maps. And that is as clear as I can possibly put that. Nerfing the speed of his grapple hook deploying is essentially just a useless nerf because I am still going to get to that location you do not want me to be in eventually. But moving on to the final specialist changes, they have tweaked Rao in a very significant way. Rao no longer reveals players around an enemy he has recently hacked and killed. Instead, Rao will now reveal enemies in the target's area when he hacks a target. This will reveal all information in that area, such as enemy soldiers, vehicles, and gadgets within a staggering 10-meter radius of the hacked target for a very brief period of time. This is insane. It means that if you hack someone, I think it spots or maybe even wall hack spots people within a 10-meter radius around it. That is crazy good. But that isn't the only thing they did to Rao. They actually changed the way Rao's hack works to make it so instead of disabling weapons on vehicles, it will trigger the damage states. So vehicles will become dead in the water, sort of. They will become much less mobile. You will disable tank treads. You will disable helicopter rotors. And it's still going to be incredibly effective. It's just going to be a little different for Rao. Now moving on to some absolutely fantastic changes regarding explosive spam and explosive balancing in Battlefield 2042, something the game has needed for quite a long time. Before we get into it, quick reminder, hit the like button and of course subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying the video or find it informative. For the first change here, frag grenades. I've always called frag grenades in Battlefield 2042 nuke grenades or nuclear bombs because their radius is insanely large in my opinion. They've reduced the inner blast radius of frag grenades and scatter grenades, and they've also reduced the general blast radius for frag grenades and scatter grenades. This is incredibly welcome in my opinion. It will definitely help on the new redacted map coming in Season 6. And on top of this, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, sit down because this is a great change. They have finally nerfed the SPH launcher really into the ground. They have reduced the magazine capacity to 1 for the SPH launcher. They've reduced the amount of shells carried from 4 to 2. So instead of 4 shots, you only get a maximum of 2 shots now. And they've added a movement speed penalty when aiming down sights with the SPH launcher. Great changes, but that's not all. They have also nerfed Zane's Airburst launcher, which is one of the most bullshit and brain-dead weapons in the entire game, and it is needed to be nerfed for quite a long time. They have reduced the amount of magazines from 2 to 1. They have increased the amount of time it takes to recharge the ammo for it, and they've also adjusted the recharge behavior to not replenish an entire magazine at once, but it will replenish single rounds at once now, which is another significant nerf. So SPH launcher and Airburst launcher significantly nerfed. And lastly, in the explosive changes section, they have actually reduced the range at which C5 will kill a max health soldier, and they've adjusted the damage curve to be more quote-unquote readable, whatever that means. And finally, we're almost getting close to the end of this gigantic changelog. The vehicle section, in the general section of this, they've updated the heat shell name to match its functionality. They fixed an issue where directional exit points would not behave as intended when on slopes. And they have changed the way you're designated by SOFLAMs and tracer darts. It will now communicate whether or not you're being locked by a SOFLAM or locked by a tracer dart to the vehicle user. So if you're in a tank, it will show you if it's a SOFLAM or not. For vehicles in general, this includes AA guns, main battle tanks, the Tor tank, the Bolt, the LATV-4 transport vehicles. They have made them more maneuverable. They've increased turning rates on main battle tanks. They've increased the acceleration and deceleration for main battle tanks. They've increased the braking power of main battle tanks. And it basically takes a little bit longer to reach max speed in battle tanks, but you can bypass this by using the boost option. For the AA guns, they've increased the power of braking. For air vehicles, they have lowered the impulse of the 30mm cannon of the attack heli, and players will now be ejected from aircraft when attempting to enter elevators with them. So, okay, sure. For ground vehicles in general, all ground vehicles will now have an improved sense of gravity. You can essentially just fall faster to the ground, and you don't travel as far if you hit like a crazy jump, so vehicles feel heavier, more grounded. And in an incredibly questionable change that I will absolutely make an entire video dedicated to, for some reason, they have removed the gunship, or the Superhind and the Condor's 40mm grenade pod and replaced it with a burst fire 30mm cannon. So I, for one, am incredibly intrigued to see how good that is. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you want to see an entire video dedicated to me basically figuring out how that thing works. And then finally, when it comes to the Tor tank has seen nerfs across the board. Lower damage, doesn't one-shot things from as far away. It doesn't warp around on some of the ground terrain elements. And they finally added a velocity scale pitch for the Tor tank, which essentially means that projectiles will now fire slower at certain pitches of the turret. And finally, in the vehicle section, jets have seen some improvements made to their first-person perspective crosshairs, and they have included a jet afterburner meter so players can better know how to manage it. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, after almost 19 minutes, we reach the final section in this massive changelog for Battlefield 2042 Season 6. The weapons section starts off with a banger. They fixed an issue with the V-Car's camera shake being out of proportion and make the weapon feel quite bad compared to its other counterparts. So maybe try the V-Car after this update. Interestingly, they have increased the blast radius of the explosive bolt on the Ghostmaker R10 crossbow from 2 to 3 meters, so maybe it is time to whip out the crossbow on the new map. And they have fixed an issue where semi-automatic spread was not calculated correctly on some weapons, causing them to be less accurate than other weapons. They have fixed an issue with the misaligned RPK laser sight, and for whatever reason, they have nerfed the P90. The P90 has more spread, and the PP29 now has more spread as well while moving. I am genuinely, absolutely baffled that they would nerf the P90, considering I think the P90 is one of the worst guns in the game already. I think the spread was already abysmal, and now they're giving it more spread. So, yeah, no idea what that change is. But I suppose that change is counteracted by the fact that they added another good change. They have removed the 12M shotguns and the 880 shotguns headshot multipliers. So you should be getting one shot a little less by the 12M in close quarters now. In terms of specific weapon category changes, there was an entire LMG and DMR balance update. In general, LMGs will now be more accurate. Some of them will have less recoil. Some of them will have more recoil. The RPT will have its recoil increased. M240B will have its recoil increased. PKP will have its recoil increased, even though the PKP is near unusable anyway. And in a blanket change to almost all LMGs in this list, they will have a slower spread increase rate, so you can fire more bullets for longer, more accurately. And finally, the last section in this update, the DMR balance section. The M39 SVK and SVD have all seen their spread increased slightly when firing at their maximum fire rate. The VCAR has been slightly buffed with a spread reduction when firing at its maximum fire rate, and the BSVM has been nerfed for, I don't know, the 97th time. It will have more horizontal recoil and more initial vertical recoil. So that is going to do it for this gigantic update, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed the content, if you found this informative, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, comment down below, did you enjoy the video? I will link the patch notes in the description, as I always do. And of course, follow me on Twitch, join the Discord, follow me on Instagram. All the links are in the description. I stream on Twitch every single day, and I will be streaming Season 6 as soon as it comes out. Be sure not to miss that. Following on Twitch is free. I hope to see some of you guys in the Discord, and I'm going to see you guys later.